Did you know that we're on social media? You can find us at facebook.com/criminallylisted and at criminally_listed on Instagram. Make sure you follow us to stay up to date on the latest news. Number 3. Rhoda Toth. Some superstitious people believe that the number 13 is inherently unlucky. 20 years after her lottery win, Rhoda Toth is also a believer. Rhoda and her husband, Alex, won Florida's $13 million jackpot on May the 4th, 1990. Normally, winning the lottery is the best day of someone's life. But, looking back, she said later, it was my worst day. Technically, the winning amount for the toss was $13,333,333.33. The Toths elected to accept annual payments over 20 years in lieu of a lump sum payment. But they obviously didn't do the math, because they were both wary when their first check arrived for $666,666.66. Another unlucky number, perhaps. At first, however, things seemed to be going great for the newfound millionaires. Rhoda was exceedingly generous with her new wealth. She bought cars and paid off mortgages for the people in her life. I felt sorry for them, Rhoda said later. We took care of family, and we took care of friends. We took care of people we didn't even know. She and her husband traveled the world, something they never dreamed about in their Newport Richie trailer park when they only had $27 in the bank. Soon they moved out of their double-wide mobile home into a 3,000 square foot mansion in an exclusive 3-golf course village called Hudson, Florida. Their mansion was complete with an ocean view from their Olympic-sized swimming pool. Unfortunately, the couple stuck out like a sore thumb in their new neighborhood. During the 1990s, the Toths also began making rounds on the talk show circuit, recounting their rags to riches story. In those circles, they found themselves rubbing elbows with Oprah Winfrey and Donald Trump. But by the end of the decade, the good times began to evaporate. It turns out that Alex was also exceedingly generous with her money. He had apparently been freely giving out hundreds of thousands of dollars to casinos, and all he asked in return was a chance to play their games. He wasn't a very good player, unfortunately. Remember, math wasn't Alex's strong suit, which may be the reason why he also didn't calculate the correct amount of money he was supposed to pay on his taxes over the years. The IRS came to Hudson to remind him of the court order for an immediate back payment of just under $4 million. The problem was, the Toths didn't have it. And then Alex got sick, suffering a physical and mental breakdown which required institutional care. With their bills and debts mounting, Rhoda turned to those friends she'd been so generous with early on. But she says they were nowhere to be found when push came to shove. So the Toths made a deal with a Florida financial company that caters especially to lottery winners in financial straits. In return for signing over their 14 remaining annual lottery payouts, totaling around $9 million, the couple received a check for a mere $3 million. They had no choice, they said. Some of the $3 million went towards Alex's care, and the rest went to the IRS. But it wasn't enough. In 2006, the IRS took the Toths to court to recover the tax payments they were still owed. Alex died before the trial, age 60. Rhoda was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison for tax crimes. When she was released, Rhoda had nothing. She moved back into her old trailer park in Florida, although she now wired her car's battery for power and siphoned water from her neighbor's hose. Looking back, Rhoda cites the yearly check amounts as a big cause for her bad luck. $666,666.66. Too many sixes, Rhoda said in 2010. Alex said it was evil money. And maybe he was right. Number 2. Suzanne Mullins. In early January 1993, Suzanne Mullins walked into a convenience store in southwest Roanoke, Virginia, and, on a whim, decided to buy a lottery ticket. When the clerk asked her what numbers she wanted to choose, she shrugged and said, "Let the machine decide." The lottery console, and perhaps fate, spit out the ticket with 3, 24, 31, 35, 42, and 44. And it turned out those numbers were a winner. "I almost had a stroke," Suzanne told the Associated Press at the time. But avoid this particular sequence of numbers if you play the lottery yourself. Because while Suzanne hit the jackpot of $4.2 million based on those lucky numbers, she faced nothing but misery and bad luck afterwards. Perhaps Suzanne should have paid attention to the ominous omens that came when she and her husband first walked into the Virginia lottery offices to collect their winnings. All week after realizing they'd won, the Mullins made big plans with the money. They dreamed of exotic vacations, seaside villas, and fancy cars. But Suzanne and her husband, Tommy, were shocked when the lottery office handed them a check with only a few zeros. It seems Uncle Sam first takes a big cut, which lowered the take-home amount to just over $2.5 million instead of the $4.2 million they were expecting. Death and taxes are, of course, inevitable, just ask Rhoda Toth. But the Mullins were further confused to discover that maybe their win wasn't a windfall after all. In fact, they were told that their jackpot would be cut up into 20 yearly payments of just under $143,000. It's still a lot of money, of course, but it wouldn't buy the trips and cars they dreamed of. Tommy Mullins would have to keep his job as a union rep, and Suzanne would continue being a stay-at-home mom for their teenage daughter. As time moved along, the Mullins lived a comfortable life. Their daughter got married in the mid-1990s, and they spared no expense. But things went south after their daughter's new husband developed a medical condition that required around-the-clock care. He was uninsured, you see, so Suzanne agreed to pay for his well-being. As the doctor's bills began to pile up, Suzanne grew more embittered. The yearly checks just weren't enough. The Mullins found themselves having to sell off their possessions in order to make ends meet. If only the state lottery paid out in one lump sum instead of having to wait 20 years. Then, in 1998, with Suzanne at her lowest point, it was as if the devil himself appeared in the kitchen with a solution. Through the internet, Suzanne learned about a company in Florida that catered to lottery winners with the same financial concerns. The same company that helped Rhoda Toth in her time of need. The company agreed to give Suzanne a $200,000 loan in return for signing over the next 8 of those future yearly payments. So in return for the $200,000, she agreed to give the company about $1 million of her future winnings. With no other choice, Suzanne made the deal with this devil. But at least a portion of that loan money went to pay for her son-in-law's funeral. When he died in 2000, he left his extended family nearly $1 million in debt, with interest compounding. Yet, in the early part of the new millennium, there was finally some good luck that may have helped Suzanne win the lottery in the first place. In 2001, the Virginia State Lottery changed its rules. It allowed former winners to claim the remainder of their jackpots in a lump sum. For Suzanne, that meant a check for just over $1 million. After paying off the remaining medical debt and her $200,000 loan, it was looking as if she would break even. Telephone call from that financial company in Florida reminded her that while she paid them back the loan amount, they still expected those yearly checks for the next 5 years. That, of course, was the deal she signed. Unable to pay, the company sued Suzanne, who used the little money she had to hire an attorney, Michael Hart. Appearing in a Roanoke court in 2004, Mr. Hart told the judge that the Mullins were simply a victim of bad luck. It's been a hard road, Hart told the court. It's just not been jet planes to the Bahamas. Unmoved, the judge ordered Suzanne to repay the company its expected money. By 2008, Suzanne Mullins was broke and bankrupt, one of the unluckiest lottery winners you'd ever meet. By coincidence, that same year, a man named Henry Mullins of Norfolk, Virginia, won the state's Win for Life lottery, earning a $1,000 check every week until his dying day. Henry is of no relation, however, to Frank Mullins, who won a $1 million payout for the Virginia State Lottery in 1994, a year after Suzanne won. Looking back, it was as if the fate knew it got wrong with Suzanne Mullins. It was trying to make amends to a few Virginians with the same surname. Fate can be funny that way. Number 1. William Bud Post. Growing up, William Bud Post had a tough life. Orphaned at a young age, he and his siblings were split up, and he spent time in a juvenile lockup as a youth. Later, as a young man, he served a short stint in the Army before he began roaming the Northeast, picking up work where he could find it. He served as a carnival worker, spray painter, short order cook, and a circus side hand. But things began to really turn for Bud when he met and fell in love with his wife. Together, they settled down in Pennsylvania and would go on to have a handful of children together. By the mid-1980s, their kids had flown the nest, and Bud looked forward to a quiet middle age with his one true love. Until his wife died sadly and suddenly, leaving him a widower and very much alone at the age of 45. And the misfortune continued. Soon after his wife's death, a workplace accident left Bud unable to earn a living. Now surviving on a government disability check, Bud was forced to sell his house and move into a dilapidated apartment in nearby Erie, Pennsylvania. One chilly April afternoon in 1987, while walking through the city lamenting his bad luck, Bud saw smoke rising from a 2-level apartment building. Without thinking and relying on his Army basic training, Bud ran up the stairs to the 2nd level and found a terrified 3-year-old boy cowering in the corner. Despite his nagging injury, Bud picked up the child and carried him down to the street, saving his life and earning the respect of the firefighters arriving on the scene. Days later, the fire department presented Bud Post with a plaque commemorating his heroism. He became something of a neighborhood celebrity. But more importantly, the daring fire rescue seemed to spur something inside Bud. Friends reported that he grew more optimistic about the future. So they weren't surprised when one day he went to the store and came home with $40 worth of lottery tickets. A purchase, he said, that only left him with $2.46 in the bank. I just had a feeling, Bud told the Associated Press in 1988. I can't explain it. I get feelings, like premonitions. And Bud's premonition, maybe some would call it karma, paid off. On February 26, 1988, William Bud Post was overjoyed to learn that one of the tickets he bought won him a whopping $16.1 million in Pennsylvania's Super 7 lottery. However, as we've demonstrated so far, there was a catch with the payout. The jackpot payment was due to come out in yearly payments, with annual payments of about $500,000 over the next quarter century. But surely, he assumed, $500,000 was enough to live the high life on, right? Unfortunately, Bud Post didn't have a premonition about how wrong he would become. Like many lottery winners, Bud went shopping. Television sets, motorcycles, cars, trucks, small engine airplanes, and even a yacht in Tennessee. But a few hard luck bad investments followed, and then came the lawsuit. Ann Crayprick, Bud's landlord at the time of his big win, and the person who accompanied him to collect his first check in the lottery offices, felt cheated. She claimed that of the $40 Bud used to buy the tickets, $20 came from her, and that, her lawyer said, entitled her to half the winnings. Bud's lawyer told her she didn't have a hope in hell of getting a payment, but the judge was inclined to disagree in order that Bud's future annual checks be deposited into a bank until a jury could sort out the he said, she said mess. 3 years went by, and the bills for those purchases and investments came due. And with no money coming in to pay them off, Bud Post was in bad shape. I faced the loss of everything, he told the paper later. I faced starvation. Bud's new house was literally falling apart, with him unable to pay for repairs. When one bill collector surprised Bud by approaching the house unannounced, Bud fired a shotgun into the air to scare him off. The police were not impressed. Also unimpressed was Bud's little brother, Jeff, who had grown bitter that Bud was frittering away his good fortune. Convinced he'd do a better job at being a millionaire, Jeff slyly had his brother change his will to give him a large chunk of the winnings in the event of his death. And then Jeff hired a hitman to get the ball rolling. Unaware that the gun for hire was an undercover Florida cop. Bud's new wife, terrified by the prospect of being targeted for murder, walked out, then sued him for alimony. And then the judgment came down that perhaps confirmed Bud's suspicion that his money was cursed. A Pennsylvania court decided the landlady, Ann Crayprick, indeed was legally entitled to half of Bud's jackpot. He was forced to sign over $4.1 million to her and almost $1 million to her lawyers for good measure. After taxes, Bud Post was left with $4.7 million. But rather than accepting $250,000 every year until 2014, Bud wanted to be done with the whole lottery nightmare. He auctioned the rights to his future payouts to a lottery finance company, pocketing just over $1 million in cash. Bud then sold off his vehicles and luxury items to help him pay off his debt, but he refused to get rid of his yacht. He said he hoped to start over by opening a charter fishing business where his boat was docked in Tennessee. And that's where the police found him after a judge put out a warrant for his arrest in 1998. It turns out that the bill collector wanted Bud charged with attempted murder for the shotgun warning. As Bud sat in jail for months after a verdict of armed assault, he looked back on his life and realized something. I was happier before I won the money, he told a reporter. Despite his earlier premonition, Bud Post probably never envisioned at the time of his death in 2006, at the age of 66, he'd be sitting in a small, 2-bedroom apartment, living on his meager $400 a week disability check. He'd sold off everything of value he owned to make ends meet. But the one thing he never sold, the last thing that was found hanging on the smoke-stained wall, was the plaque from the Erie Fire Department commemorating his heroic good deed back in 1987. Whoever said no good deed goes unpunished has probably never won the lottery. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed, we have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminally listed. We also have a podcast about cold cases that were eventually solved called Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. You can find it on Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you find great podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.